unrealistic. Here we are, the current recession. That's the blue. Number one is, you can notice with the current recession, GDP fell below the old peak further than any other recession. And number two is, we haven't got back there yet. The good news is, it's very likely that we will get back to the old high either the first or second quarter of 2011. That will put us in quarter 14 or quarter 15. Longer than the rest, but not that much longer. So part of the problem we've had over the last year, I believe, is that we've simply had unrealistic expectations of how quickly we could get the good ship Lollipop back on afloat. Here's a summary. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. You can look at it in the handout, but here's a summary by recession. Here I list all the major recessions of the contemporary time. This is how long it took GDP to rebound. My golly, this one is really the most interesting recession. That's our tech bust recession. Within 1 quarter, we've gotten GDP back to its old high, but it took us 45 months for employment to get back to its old high. That was the jobless recovery. Here's the severity. You can see in terms of severity, GDP is the decline the worst, but only slightly worse than the mid-70s decline. But look at employment. I mean, we've seen nothing like this before, except going back to the Great Depression. That employment today is over 6%, or at its worst, it was over 6% below its original peak. So you cannot expect this to just turn around overnight. The best news we've had for some time was the news that just came out a week and a half ago of employment growth in the United States. 150,000 jobs we added in the month of October. But at 150,000 jobs, if that were to continue, it would take us 5 to 6 years for us to see unemployment rates back down to normal. So the frustration with employment is real, but it's one that shouldn't have been a surprise. It shouldn't have been a surprise, and while this is not a political statement, I will tell you it didn't matter who was elected president in 2008, this wasn't going to happen fast. This was something that was going to take a while to unravel. Examples of the lag between GDP growth and employment growth, I'll just go over this really quickly. This is the recession of the 80s. Blue is GDP growth. We finally permanently get above the old high, but it takes us almost a year to get employment to start growing and reach a new high. Here's the recession of the 90s. Look at this lag between GDP growth finally hitting a new high and employment growth finally hitting a new high. It takes time. Here we are. We haven't hit a new high, but I said we're getting close. GDP growth is likely to hit a new high, probably first or second quarter, more likely second quarter of 2011. But how long is it going to take employment over here somewhere to hit a new top high? It's going to take a while. And again, almost independent of public policy, it's going to take a while. And we're going to have to be patient, and we're going to continue to wring our hands a bit. An alternative scenario to the double dip story, which was the worry of the summer. If you remember the summer, everybody was talking about the double dip, okay? And we've kind of pushed that aside for temporary, and now we're concerned about inflation, and we're just going in these crazy cycles of emotion. But the alternative to the double dip, or the alternative to the more traditional recovery, which is you get cratered and then you bounce right back up. The alternative to that is what happened to Japan in the 90s. Japan had a major crash in 1990-91. Japan's growth during the previous 2 decades, its average growth in real dollar GDP was over 4% a year. It was the darling of the world. We were sending corporate executives to Japan on a massive scale to teach them how to really run business. And what happened was that to a large extent, this crash here that occurred in Japan was a crash that's rather familiar to our current setting. Commercial property prices absolutely soared. Commercial properties were gaining in value something of the order of 25 to 30% per year during the 80s. Tokyo prices, you know, I know you guys are bragging about how cheap real estate is in Houston and how expensive it is in Manhattan, right? Manhattan prices are nothing compared to what Tokyo prices were in 1989. And the floor gave out. The market just absolutely crashed. Stock market crashed in Japan. Real estate markets crashed in Japan. For a mere $10,000 or $15,000, you could have gotten an 800 square foot flat in Tokyo. Unbelievable. When that crash occurred, the Japanese probably lost somewhere around 75% of their national personal wealth. That hit was a hit that was going to have lasting impact for some time. The Japanese economy struggled. In fact, during the next 11 years, we call it the lost decade, but during the next 11 years, the Japanese economy never grew, on average, didn't even make a 1% real growth rate. This is almost a triple dip recession. The bottom line is, though, that these numbers here, these two highs here, are actually pathetically low for a post-recession recovery. They never even really got off the ground. So one of the questions that we need to ask ourselves is, could this be our fortune? Now, whether or not it's our fortune or not, you can't just look at history and look at graphs and let's say, we look like this or we look like that. I think there's a much better approach. It's an approach that I have taken, now for the last 3 or 4 years at least. Those of you that attend some of my seminars have heard me say this before, but I can't repeat it enough. Every recession has a set of purposes. And until those purposes are fulfilled, you cannot expect a permanent, sustainable recovery. So the question is, have we fulfilled our purposes? Let me tell you a little bit about Japan. If you go back and take a look at Japan, let me tell you a little bit about Japan. And just one example. Can you imagine what a commercial real estate prices dropping by 80% did to the bottom line of the banks in Japan? We think we had a banking crisis in the United States. 80%, and the Japanese banks were loaded with commercial debt. Okay. Now, the worst of it was in 1991. That's when everybody realized Japan was in real trouble. By the year 2000, Japanese banks still had over 85% of the bad debt on their books. There's a lot of what we're trying to do is to eliminate the reality. We're trying to postpone foreclosures. We're trying to postpone all sorts of things. And the bottom line is we need to accept the new reality and get on with it. Because Japan was so stubborn in admitting problems that they were in, And